Alright, we're back with the 2008 Yamaha YFZ450. Last video we picked this thing up for 1,800 bucks. Crazy good deal for 2008 YFZ. We got it so cheap because this thing was smoking and shutting off randomly when riding it. So we got back home, I figured, maybe a carb clean. We tore apart the carb and we found that the accelerator pump was not working. Pilot jet was clogged and it was pretty dirty. So we cleaned that out, put it back on, and we actually got rid of the shutting off randomly problem, which I think was the accelerator pump plus the pilot. Solved that problem, but it was still smoking like crazy. So we tore down the top end, cylinder, piston, head, everything came off, and we found that the cylinder was rubbed off in some areas. So it's missing the nickel cell coating. You can see where it's lighter and darker on the cylinder. So the piston must have worn off that coating, and I'm guessing those rings weren't sealing. And then we measured the ring gap, and you can see it's like 10 times what it's supposed to be. I believe we measured it to be like 90 thousandths or something. It should be 14 thousandths. So massive ring gap. And the piston actually looked pretty good, but there's no blow-by marks, no signs of blow-by, which there should be. So something was going on there as well. But both rings were horrible. I'm guessing this was the stock piston and cylinder, so it could just be from many, many hours on this thing being original. I'm not sure. But definitely needed a new top end. Cylinder, piston, everything. The head looked good. All the valves look good. We're going to be replacing the valve seals today as well, just to make sure that wasn't part of the cause of the smoking. But we ended up getting a new top end kit, Wiseco piston. This is all standard bore. And then we got the cylinder works cylinder. These are pretty good. I've had good luck with these. New gasket kit and valve seals. And then the cam chain guide that was all chewed up last video. So today we're going to be installing this, hopefully getting this quad to stop smoking. I'm hoping all of our problems go away with this fresh top end. So let's get to work. We've got a lot of work to do, and we'll see what the heck happens. Hoping this is the key here. Alright, just kind of checking out the cylinder. Want to make sure there's no burrs in here. You can see the cross hatches on there, so this was already honed out. And like I said before, this is nickel plated. Yeah, that feels pretty good. And I've had pretty good luck with the cylinder work cylinder. They're a little bit more expensive, but at least you don't have to worry about it. Wiseco piston. Let's open that up, see what that looks like. I've had pretty good luck with the Wiseco pistons. The cranks, on the other hand, are pretty crappy, I think. Wrist pin here. I don't have to open it up now. Here is the piston. Clips. Looks pretty good. Get these out. Alright, so right away we can measure the ring gap. And I'll show you the difference between the ring gaps on the piston that came out and the new piston we're putting in. It's crazy. Wait. Looks good. Top ring is going to be the brass colored ring. You're going to have an N on it right there. That means you face that side up on the piston when you install it. Let's get that in. Check the ring gap here. And you can see there's the ring gap right there compared to so you can see the difference. So there's the original ring gap when we took this cylinder and piston off, and there's the new ring gap. It's nice and tight. So that's what that's supposed to look like. We'll quick measure it, make sure everything's good. Just by eye, it looks like it's pretty good. But we'll take a feeler gauge and get a measurement on there. I'm guessing that's gonna be right around 14 thousandths, which is what it's supposed to be. Exactly 14. Just fits in. Check this out. Just goes in. So that is literally perfect. Second ring going in. Same thing with this one. This is the second ring. You're going to see an N right there in the ring. That side you face up when installing the piston ring onto the piston. Nice tight ring gap. Looks perfect. Get your feeler gauge in there. This thing is going to be 14 thousandths as well. Yep. Just slides in there. So that ring is perfect as well. Alright, so here's the head we took off. Everything looked perfect there. Barely any wear. You can see the valves have some carbon on there. We're going to clean those up, and we're going to replace the valve seals. So let's start doing that. We're going to take the buckets and the shims out first. And make sure we have those lined up perfectly when we reinstall them. So we drew a picture over here. Top of the cylinder, and we'll put our shims and our buckets where they need to go, over there. Alright, so let's start with the exhaust valves. Get those off first here. Compress this, and those pins should pop out. There we go. You can take a magnet or a little screwdriver and go in there like that. One's still stuck in there, but let's hold those on. There we go, there's the other one. Get your spring out. And we're putting these over here so that we know where to put them back when we reinstall. So keeping everything organized here. Push that valve out. That came out easy. You can see all the carbon on there. We'll clean that all up. Lots of carbon. Usually the exhaust valves have a lot more carbon on there than the intake. Valve looks nice and straight. And you can test that by putting it in a drill. If you're thinking it's bent, just shove it in the drill here. You shouldn't see any wobble on there. So that valve is super straight. There you go. Spring. Push the valve out. Look how much carbon's on there. Lots of carbon on there. Huh. And the valve seals be right down in there. Those little green valve seals. And you can get those off, usually with a needle nose pliers. So let's just try to take those off quick. Those are what those look like. And what happens is these are going to leak by the valves here, so oil will leak into that gap between the valve and the seal, and it will actually go and burn off in the cylinder port. But these felt pretty good actually, they're pretty tight on that valve. So I'm guessing the valve seals were probably not leaking. Let's see. Doesn't look too bad. We'll just do one of the intake valves for you guys so you can see what those look like, and then we'll speed up the video. But I'll show you the carbon differences on the intake and the exhaust valves. Got your spring here. Alright, there's your valve. You can see not a ton of carbon on there. At least not as much as the exhaust valve. But we'll get all the intake out and start cleaning these up. Taking a look at the seats here. Everything looks perfect. No pits. So what I like to do for these to clean them up is just take a Dremel. This is a plastic wheel on here, so it won't scratch anything. Spray it down with some brake cleaner. So now all the carbon's off of there. Looking good. Alright, here's the before. Lots of carbon on there. Alright, next one. Alright, we've got an exhaust valve here. See how the magnet doesn't stick to it? So this valve should not be lapped. It's not steel. You only want to lap steel valves. So these typically have a coating on there you don't want to rub off. And if you lap it, it would get rid of that coating and these valves would wear out faster. So you want to leave that just the way it is. If there's pitting or anything like that in the valve, you want to replace them. But you don't want to lap these. And then same with the intake. You see magnet does not stick to it. Same thing. You don't want to lap those in either. So we're just going to leave those like that. We didn't have an issue with the valves at all. So we shouldn't have one now either. But we're going to install the valve seals. Comes with the hard outer case or the intake. And these are the exhaust seals here. So I typically like to put a little bit of oil on those and then shove these in. Oil I like to use. We'll do the exhaust valves first. Get a little bit on there. These are kind of hard to stick all the way on. So what you can do is take a screwdriver, go like that, stick it down the hole here, and then you're going to be lined up, and then you can just shove that on with your finger. And you can see now that one's on there. That's the easiest way I've found to do it. So oil, stick it down a screwdriver, put the screwdriver down the hole, gets lined up, and then you can just push it down with your finger, just like that. So now we can do the intake. These are typically a little harder to push on. Alright, you can see all the valve seals are on. Alright, now we can get our valves back in. So just shove it in there. There we go. Get our spring on. Alright, we've got the buckets and the shims back in. You can see the valves are looking perfect on there, all cleaned up, no more carbon. So we're going to take off the gasket material here, and then we can get this installed after the piston. Alright, let's get the piston set up. We already got one of the clips in here on this side. It's easier to get a clip in without the rings on there to worry about. Now we can get the oil rings on. I want to put the center one on first. And these don't have up or down marks on it, so they can go either way. Get that on like that. You can go underneath, get the next one on. You want to stagger that gap, that ring gap here. You don't want them right next to each other, so I like to take one of these and move it. There we go. Looks good. Now we can get the second ring on. Again, the N is facing up when you install it. That is a thick ring. The first ring, N, goes up. Alright, so all rings are installed. I like to double check, make sure those rings are in the up position with the N facing up. Yep, that looks good. Now what we want to do is stagger the ring gaps. So first ring gap is going to be on the front side of the piston, and then the second ring gap will be on the back, 180 degrees apart. And same with the oil rings. So now that that's staggered, we're ready to go. We can oil this up. So you can spin all the rings, make sure they're all loose and good. Oil the top of the piston, skirt. Looks good. I can put a little gasket maker on the base gasket here. Just a very thin layer. Got the cylinder all lubed up here, ready to go. Get the cam chain through. All right, brand new guide going in. That one was chewed up, the other one. All right, so torque sequence for the head. We're gonna start with the left one, crisscross pattern to the one up here, then back to the right one, crisscross up here. And we're gonna start with 22 foot-pounds each one, and then we're gonna back them off and then go to 14 foot-pounds, and then we're gonna do 90 degrees sequence up to 180 degrees. And I'll show you guys how to do that. So first we're gonna do the 22 foot-pounds. All right, now we're gonna back those off. Back those off. Then we're gonna go to 14 foot-pounds here. We went to 14 foot-pounds. Now we're going to mark these bolts with a marker. So you can see where 180 degrees is here. Now we're going to go 90 degrees each bolt, and then another 90 degrees to make 180. There's 90. There's 90. There's 90. There's 90. Another 90. You can kind of feel a bottom out there. It's getting pretty tight. I usually go a little bit less than the 90. If I feel like it's gonna snap the bolt. Yeah, that's pretty tight. Alright, so those are all torqued up. Alright, we're lined up at top dead center here. Hopefully you guys can see. There's a little line on the flywheel lined up with the notch in the case. So now we can get the cams on. Alright. So there's a dot on the cam. We want to line up with the surface of the head here. Make sure we're still at top dead center here. Yep, perfect. Alright, so the intake cam's gonna have these two dots here. One right there, one right there. We want the lobes pointing out this way. And we're gonna get these dots lined up with the surface of the head. So, put this in. This one's a little trickier to get in. Alright, and that just ended up to be perfect, I think. Let's see. I think we're one tooth off yet. Alright, so now if you look, that right here is parallel with the surface of the head. That one's pointing off at like a, probably like a 50-degree angle. And then if you push the tensioner in, you can see that dot gets parallel with the surface of the head right there. And that one's shooting straight out. See that? So that timing is spot on. Lobes are pointing out either direction. Alright, valve clearance specs for the intake are going to be 4 thousandths to 6 thousandths. Exhausts are 8 to 10 thousandths. So we set these last video, the intake was tight on this side. So let's just check them again since we cleaned out the valves. This one we set to 5 thousandths. Let's see if it's still at 5. Yep. And these were at 4. These were at a tight 4, so let's see here. Yep, slides in, yep. Alright. And then I believe these were at 8 thousandths. That one's a little tight. Yep, that one fit in. Alright, so all the valves are still within spec. Alright, getting the tensioner back in, we've got the new gasket on there. So to get the tensioner to retract, take a screwdriver, and you want to go clockwise, and we'll push that plunger in, and that should stay like that. This one's got up on it, right there you can see. It says up, so we can install it like that. I like to get one side in first, lock that down, and then work on the other side. Valve cover going on here. Get that lined up. Alright, this thing's all back together. Engine is complete. Got the pipe back on. Carbs back on, so let's get some coolant in this thing. We changed out the oil last video, so that should be good. Alright, well, before we put the plastics on, let's see if she fires up here. We're hoping this thing does not smoke. Let's see what happens. Let this thing idle for a little bit and then we'll rev it out. See if she smokes. So far, no smoke. pretty good. Wow. No smoke at all yet. Oh yeah, I think we fixed it. No smoke at all out of the exhaust. Revving it out, no smoke. This is all just burning off the WD-40 that we used to loosen up those bolts. But yeah, it's no leaks at all. We're gonna check the oil and then start this thing back up. Let this thing break in for a bit. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Sounds amazing, idles perfectly. So we're headed in the right direction here. Got all the plastics back on, looking good. Let's get this thing broken in. Clutch cable just broke. What the heck? Ah, how could that happen? Darn it. We're gonna try to ride it without a clutch, I guess. Shoot. I don't know how that's gonna work. We'll see. Tough. this thing's running flawlessly. It's a little tough to ride without the clutch. You can't really go too crazy on it. Yeah, we were able to do a couple long stretches going full speed, and it is perfect. No smoke at all. So this thing is officially fixed. Now we have to order up a clutch cable. Seems like you fix one thing, another thing breaks. I'm not sure how the heck that happened. I don't know if the clutch cable got hot where it was routed. Let's take a look. No, it's not getting hot. So it must have been rusted through. But yeah, not bad. Oh yeah, no smoke. Perfect. This thing's fixed. I do have a pressure washer. This is just easier, and then you don't get oil all over the lawn. So that's why I do it here. For everyone that comments. Vinny wanted to check out the quad here. What do you think? Ow! Like a little bear cub. Sit. Shake. Well, first ride on this thing went really well. Absolutely zero smoke, tons of power, didn't cut out at all. So we fixed all the issues with this quad from when we first picked it up. So adjusting that valve, the first video, the intake valve seemed to help the cutout problem. And then that raised compression. And then rebuilding the top end fixed the smoking issue. So I probably have right around maybe 10 hours into this machine, and now it's probably worth right around $4,000, being a 2008 YFZ450. Bought it for 18, now it's worth probably $4,000 to $4,500. In my area, that's what they're going for $4,500. There's another one up for 43, is up for 32. This one's up for 52. So price range is right between $3,500 and $4,500 for the 2008 YFZ450. So really can't complain about that. To rebuild it, it was probably like 400 bucks. So not too bad. But it's running great, and everything went smooth today. No hiccups at all except for the clutch cable, which we have to order up. That just snapped off. So thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing. Hopefully you enjoyed me picking this thing up, diagnosing it, rebuilding it, and taking it for the first ride. Stay tuned for next video, and until next time, we are out.